there's no way I can tell you who that man was, but he was one of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life. And when the scriptures say you have to become like a little child, quite often he was that way. And one time, a devotee, someone that he really appreciated, someone he really respected, gave him a cashmere sweater as a gift, and he wore it constantly. And then he made the big mistake of doing his own laundry, and he put it in the dryer. And that cashmere sweater literally shrunk down to toddler size. We're talking this big, this big. And he came down before breakfast and he showed it to me. He says, "Oh, see, I think I made a mistake." He said, "Can you fix it?" I was like, "Oh, no, Maharaj, there's no way to fix that." Oh, and they told me who gave it to him and how he loved it. So we went back upstairs and I finished making breakfast and rang the breakfast bell. And he comes down the stairs from up above and he's put the sweater on. and it's going to like here on his arms, and this is like stomping down here, bowed wide open in the front, and he's wearing it and he's smiling. He says, "Yes, I know it's much too small, but I just can't throw it away." And so he actually wore it like that, in the monastery, just because it was more important to him who had given it to him than how he looked or felt in it. And I just see that with Ramakrishna here, that when you're truly spiritual, the body and mind fall to a distant second as far as what you're concerned about. You're, at this level of consciousness that these great souls live at, they're just almost, well, you could actually say, they're actually drunk in love. They are just full of that bliss. And that is just what's spilling over and dumping out on everybody who meets them. This is why we find these great avatars so beautiful. Jesus and Buddha and Rama, Krishna, and the Divine Mother, and any others that I might have missed, is that they are the embodiment of a pure and unconditioned love. Is that God is that love. So he wants to take his woolen scarf and cut it into two pieces to wrap around his legs, and smiled, of course. I think anybody sitting with him would have chuckled. The previous evening, Ramakrishna had a long conversation with Dr. Sarkar. Referring to it, the master said laughingly, "I told him the story of the calf and about egoism being the cause of all suffering." The younger Naren reminded Sri Ramakrishna that he, the master, had told the doctor about people suffering from the threefold misery of the world and still bragging of their well-being. The disciple said, "That was a very nice thing you said yesterday about the thorn and also about the burning it in the fire of knowledge." All right, so he's making some references to stories that he's told before. This one here about the calf, it's about how life in this world there's just so much suffering involved in it because we don't know who we are. We don't know what we are. And we're just trying to figure out, how to build a life. And egoism, which is one of the things we form in order to kind of protect ourselves from this unknown world and the unknown things in it, causes us a lot of suffering because it also doesn't know who we are and what we are. And so it does not answer the questions properly for us. It just makes up stories to explain this apparently external world to us. And a lot of times it doesn't match up. And then it tells us that we want things like new socks and bigger houses and nicer cars, forgetting that we are actually images of God, that we are Satchitananda. We're made of love, we're made of wisdom, and we are manifesting that divine principle in our lives. If we know that, and we live according to that divine principle, life is fulfilling. If we don't, we suffer, just because we're being contrary to our own nature, and it hurts. And the universe, which is God, God is more than just the universe, but at least the universe. And so we are actually this moment, the I am. God is this moment. Right? We are in God at this moment. And so we live in God, and that's why we hurt when we're selfish. That's why we're bummed out when we're angry with our friends, or we've said something mean to our mom, or something like that. It's because we live in the beloved, and whenever we're living contrary to that divine principle of love, wisdom, and being, the Divine Mother just gives us a little poke, a little bit of an indication. Hey, that's not according to your nature. You're going to hurt if you go that way. So we don't want to do that. So in the story of the ego, he was telling this story that how much a calf suffers. He was saying, you know, the bleeding of the calf calling for its mother. I don't know the exact process on it, but basically the calf gets killed for food, then this gets skinned, and then his skin gets cut or scraped up by carting tools, you know, for making leather, and then that skin itself gets sliced into little pieces to become shoelaces or the top of a drum. That was what he's talking about in the story, and that once it becomes the top of a drum, then it gets banged on endlessly until the drum breaks. He says when the drum breaks and that skin is released and thrown away at last, that calf's suffering is finished, and that sound of that string being plucked is no longer saying me, but thou. The sound changes, and as soon as the ego learns that there is no me, that each one of us is the universe, is the divine beloved, and we learn to live for others rather than for ourselves, that we'll be free, we'll find happiness, we'll find fulfillment, and we'll stop suffering so much in this world. So that's the story of the calf that he was referring to there. The master, I had direct visions of those things. One day, I was passing in back of the kuti when my whole body burst into flames, as it were, like the fire in a homa. Padmalochan was once said to me, I shall convene an assembly of pundits and proclaim your spiritual experiences before them all. But he died shortly after that. At 11 o'clock, M went to Dr. Sakar's house to report Sri Ramakrishna's condition. The doctor showed great eagerness to hear about him. So at this point, Ramakrishna has developed throat cancer, which ultimately takes his body out. And so he's being taken care of by the devotees and by some of the doctors also. Dr. Sarkar was one of them. The doctor laughing, how well I told him yesterday that in order to be able to say tuhu, thou, that's reference to the sound of the calf's skin being plucked, and finally saying thou, one must fall into the hands of an expert carter. M, it is true, sir, one cannot get rid of egoism without the help of a capable teacher. How well he spoke last night of love, bhakti. Bhakti like a woman can go into the inner court. Doctor, yes, that is very nice. But still, one cannot give up jnana, or knowledge. Right? So these words, bhakti, jnana, there's basically four generalized paths that the Vedanta has, that people through history have found to have the God experience, to see the beloved. There's the path of devotion, called bhakti yoga, and Christianity is a perfect example of an instantiation of bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. There's the path of knowledge, which is going about answering the question, who am I? And trying to find out who is it in me that wants to know God? What is it in me that wants to know purpose or to figure out what's happening? Who is it that watches my thoughts? Who is it that feels my body? Right? And so it's a path and a set of practices for answering that question. And then we've got karma yoga, which is the yoga of action, the path of action. And the path of action, you can summarize it in a lot of ways, but the way I like to think about it, it's about being present in this moment, forgetting past, because that's just a construct of mind, forgetting future, because that's also a construct of mind, and being present right now. And because there is no past or future, there's only the present moment, everything that you do should be done for its own sake. Because you have no past and no future, you can't do it for a purpose or a reason or for a result. So you simply do the thing for its own sake, investing your love and your focus and presence into it. And then when you've finished it, you offer it to the beloved and begin again. And so it's just a continual being present in the presence of the divine beloved and offering everything that you're doing, not for results, but as an offering in the moment to the divine beloved. And that way you don't get caught up in any stories or caught up in any egoistic ideals of running after things in this material world. You can stay present and aware of God and of your freedom in that moment. So that's the path of action. And then there's the path of meditation, this Raja Yoga. And this is sort of the way I understand it, mind control. So that their idea is that when you look at a lake that's absolutely placid, and you see the full moon in the sky, that full moon is perfectly reflected in that lake, and you can see that it's a moon with no problem at all. But when that lake gets stirred up, you see the same reflection, but it's a bunch of shards, flashing all over the lake. There's no indication that that is the moon. And so you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know what you're seeing. And the sages say that the mind is that way too. When there's no me in mind, when there's no selfishness. Selfishness is like a disease, like a virus. If you put just a drop of me in mind into your mind, it becomes what it is for us, just this turbulent, bull ride, basically. And so this is the reason that selfishness is so dangerous or so hurtful to us, is because you drop it in that mind and it just fizzes up like baking soda in vinegar. It goes nuts. And so what we want to do is remove the ideas of me in mind, work with the tools that Raja Yoga teaches in order to calm the mind, so that when one thought begins or ends, before the next thought begins, in that space in between the two, God can be seen. You can recognize God reflected in your mind as the whole picture, because the mind is not disturbed with selfishness. So when God, who is the light itself, projects and onto the mind, which is what all of this is, incidentally, is all of this is God projected on mind through our own ideas and our own attachments, which isn't too bad. And through Raja Yoga, you can see God that way. And so those paths used to be thought of as distinct, but now we see them as a matter of emphasis. So if you're a person who's contemplative, then Raja Yoga might be really good for you. If you can't sit still for 10 minutes, Karma Yoga might be the one for you. If you like the idea of God incarnating and coming to visit to the world, the Bhagavad Gita says that he's been doing that over and over for the entire existence of the world. That when the world gets out of whack a little bit too far, God incarnates himself in order to bring back a balance so that those who want him can find him or her. All right, so that's all off to the side there, and we'll go back down here to Dr. Sarkar, who was talking about the tuhu, the selflessness that our carter, the extra carter that frees the land, frees the cow. So one cannot get rid of this egotism without the help of a capable teacher. How well he spoke last night of bhakti, which is the path of love. Bhakti, like a woman, can go into the inner court. Doctor, yes, that was very nice, but still one cannot give up jnana, the path of knowledge. And the ultimate knowledge, when they say knowledge, they're not talking about the relative knowledge that you use your mind for, which you want a question, so you query your mind gives you back the answer. The knowledge he's talking about here is knowledge that's inherent in your being. It's the knowledge that you are that image of God that is within you. And as soon as we come to know that, that's a person of knowledge. Not that they know lots of things, but that they know who they are, which is something that can't be spoken, because we're not finite. We don't have edges or boundaries. In the end, the truth, the sages say, of everything is that we are one without a second. That it is God alone who has become all of this. But he does not say that. He accepts both knowledge and love, the impersonal truth and the personal God. He says that through the cooling influence of love, a part of the reality takes the solid form of the personal God. And with the rise of the sun of knowledge, the ice of form melts again back into the formless water of the Absolute. In other words, you realize God with form through Bhakti Yoga, and the formless Absolute through Jnana Yoga. Right? So the path of Jnana Yoga, God is impersonal there, which means that he doesn't take on attributes or form, and that you don't have a handle to grab on to get to know him or her. He is that everything, everywhere, always, unmoving. In the Psalms it talks of God being unchanging. And so this is God before manifesting, before becoming world. Right? The power of God is what manifests. And so this is the distinction that he's talking about here. And so that God, when confronted with your devotion, your love for her or him or that, takes the form of your highest ideal of love and appears to you.
and manifests God and emphasizes that message or that aspect of teaching which is most helpful to the world at the moment that he appears. And so each of his appearances are unique in their emphasis and their area of teaching, but not separate from the other visits. So we don't have to have puddles of avatars. You know, like Buddhism is this gate over here, and Christianity is this one over here, and Islam is this one over here, and just have a bunch of mud puddles of knowledge. That's not really what God wanted. You see, egoism is what causes us to break things down into disparate pieces, put boundaries on everything. It's the way that we make this huge universe palpable to us and less terrifying. So the mind breaks all these things down, and the mind has done that same thing with God. It's broken into little pieces, and then even decided, oh, you know, I've got the right one, you've got the wrong one, and we fought for thousands of years over this. And God is like, how am I going to change this, right? How's this going to work? And so there we have that going. So he appears to you as your chosen ideal, that which is most helpful to you, and helps you find the path that is most appropriate for you, and brings you forward. He says, you must have noticed that he sees God so near to him that he always converses with him. When suffering from illness, he says to God, like a small child, oh mother, it's hurting me. How wonderful his power of observation is. So this is Dr. Sarkar M. talking about Ramakrishna right now. How wonderful his power of observation is. He saw a fossil in the museum. At once he gave it as an example of the effect of companionship with holy people. Just as an object is turned into stone by remaining near stone, so does a man become holy by living with holy people. Doctor, yesterday Ishan Babu talked of the incarnation of God. What is that, to call man God? And M, everyone has his own faith. What is the use of interfering with it? Doctor, yes, what is the use? M, how the master made us laugh when he told us about a certain man who refused to believe that a house had collapsed because it wasn't published in the newspaper. Dr. Sarkar remained silent. Sri Ramakrishna had said to him, your science does not speak of God's incarnation. Therefore you say that God cannot incarnate himself as a man. It was midday, and Dr. Sarkar took M with him in his carriage. He was going to visit Sri Ramakrishna after seeing his other patients. A few days before, at Girish's invitation, Dr. Sarkar had seen his play about Buddha's life. Girish was a famous playwright in Calcutta at this time, and a great lover of Ramakrishna. He said to M, it would have been better to speak of Buddha as the incarnation of compassion. Why did he speak of him as an incarnation of Vishnu? The doctor set M down in the corner of Cornwallis Square. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and 1 or 2 devotees were seated near Sri Ramakrishna. He became impatient, like a child. Repeatedly he asked the devotees, when is the doctor coming? What time is it now? Dr. Sarkar was expected in the evening. Suddenly Sri Ramakrishna was overwhelmed with a strange mood. He placed his pillow on his lap. Filled with maternal love, he began to caress it and to hold it to his breast as if it were his child. He was in an ecstatic mood. His face was lighted with a childlike smile. He put on his cloth in a strange manner. The devotees looked at him in amazement. A little later, Sri Ramakrishna was in his normal mood. It was time for his meal. He ate a little boiled farina. He was talking to M about his mystic experience. Master, to M, do you know what I saw just now in my ecstatic state? There was a meadow covering an area of 7 or 8 miles, through which lay the road to Sihor. I was alone in that meadow. I saw a 16-year-old Paramahamsa boy, a boy who's realized God, exactly like the one I had seen in the Panchavati. A mist of bliss lay all around. Out of it emerged a boy 13 or 14 years old. I saw his face. He looked like Purna. Both of us were naked. Then he began to run around joyfully in the meadow. Purna felt thirsty. He drank some water from the tumbler and offered me what was left. I said to him, brother, I cannot take your leftovers. Thereupon he laughed and washed the glass and brought me some fresh water. Sri Ramakrishna was again in samadhi. Samadhi is that complete absorption in the divine self. So the person, in our nature, we're not actually a body or mind. We are the soul, the spirit. And the soul attaches to the body-mind. Attaches means that it likes it, and it sees itself as being that. So the soul attaches to the body, and through that egoism forms, by being attached to the body and the mind, and ego, a sense of self that's defined by gender, age, costume, traditions, all of that begins to form, right? So he was in samadhi, and when he's in samadhi, that basically means he's completely withdrawn from the body and mind. The heart rate almost stops completely. We have a story in here where the doctor was fascinated and went up and touched his eyeball, touched Ramakrishna's eyeball when he was in samadhi, just to see, just a science experiment, and touched his eyeball, and there was absolutely no reaction from Ramakrishna's body at all. So the samadhi is a very high state. It's when you know that you're not the body, when you know you're not the mind, you're not attached to any of the things in your mind or the body. This is what made him an incarnation. This is how they knew he was an incarnation, because a normal person can't really develop that level of knowledge, that level of awareness very easily. And so Ramakrishna did, and so here he is now going into that state of samadhi. He regained consciousness and began to talk to M. Master, my mind is undergoing a change. I cannot take prasad anymore. Prasad is food that's been offered on the shrine to the deity. The real and the appearance are becoming one to me. Do you know what I just saw just now? A divine form, a vision of the Divine Mother. She had a child in her womb. She gave birth to it, and the next instant began to swallow it, and as much of it as went into her mouth became void. It was revealed to me that everything is void. The Divine Mother said to me, as it were, come confusion, come delusion, come. This reminded Em of Sri Ramakrishna saying that the magician alone is real, and that all else is unreal. So it's interesting what he's saying here in the beginning. He says, my mind's undergoing a change. I'm starting to see things or understand things a bit differently. He went through these different modes. That's how the Divine Mother, he was a worshiper of the Divine God as Mother. The Divine Mother taught him about the different paths and about the unity of religion and the unity of spirit through these kinds of visions and experiences that he had. And so here he's saying that I'm going through a change, and the appearance, which is the power of God, when God chooses to manifest, when he locks himself into some limitations and restrictions so that there's boundaries, so that we can see him and talk to him, and touch him and love him in that way. That would be the appearance, and the real is the absolute unchanging, God unmanifest, God as the substrate of all things, right? And to that there's no face, there's no parts, there's no personal aspect to it at all. And he's saying that realness, this God who is everywhere present always, always perfect and unchanging, and the appearance, the personal God as a Jesus or a Buddha or as a Holy Mother, are becoming one to me. Right? So he's seeing that there's not a distinction. It's not that this is real and that's unreal, which at the beginning of our practice, we talk about the unreality of the world, how it is never what it seems, right? Because right now this paper is a book, come back in 100 years, it'll be a pile of dust, come back in another 100 years, it'll be a plant, right? So nothing in this world stays what it is. This world is constantly changing, so we never know what anything is. And so he's saying that normally we want to get past that and understand that we are the soul, and we're not the body-mind, which is the appearance, that we are this divine, unchanging principle, love, the self, within, right? That's where we're trying to go. And he's saying, okay, so he's done that, because he can go into samadhi and he can have these spiritual ecstasies. He's done that, but now Mother is showing them that there's a higher view. There's a higher view where there's not two. There's not the manifested and the unmanifested, but that there's actually a perspective or an understanding in which all of that is one. That there is a sameness to them. You can't have one without the other. And that's why he's talking about this come delusion, come confusion. Because normally we talk about Maya, or this world as it appears, being confusion. because we don't know what it is. And so we think it's material, and so we start treating it material, and then we think that it has things that we can get and have, but it doesn't have things that we can get and have. Nothing is ever satisfying because everything ends. Everything has an expiration time, right? There's only one thing that's real and unchanging, and that's the self that's gone. That in you, which has been you from the time you were a baby until now, and maybe beyond and beyond both ends of that, there's an unchanging aspect of you, which is your divine soul, your image of God that has become confused with body-mind, formed an ego, and is now living as you. But in fact, it's God living your life in you. And so that intimacy is complete. When you pray to God, at first we start off telling him everything, and then we come to know that's unnecessary. Begin to realize that God is in here with me. Right? And so prayer becomes more of a communion, more of an opening and showing God. There's no need for the words anymore. And then as mature prayer is silence. It's just that sitting with God, enjoying the presence of God. Nothing needs to be said. You know that she knows everything about you, and you can see everything about that in that silence, in that pregnant silence of reality inside when you've withdrawn from the mind. Well, how is it that the other time I tried to attract Purna but failed? This weakens my faith a little. M. But to attract a person is to work a miracle. Master. Yes, a downright miracle. M. You remember one day we were returning to Dakshineshwar in a carriage from Adar's house when a bottle broke. One of us said to you, does this mean that any harm will befall us? What do you think? You said, what do I care? Why should I bother about it? That would be miracle working. Right? So the master just sees things as they are, right? Which is a good lesson for us. Just let things be what they are. Don't provide a story for them, right? I remember when I was one time, I was a Shanti volunteer for an AIDS patient in San Francisco back in the early 90s. And I had gone to his house that morning to do his dishes and help him clean up, and his father was taking his belongings and packing the truck. He had passed away the night before. And I wandered up to the top of the hill there at Castro and Market Street in San Francisco, and I just sat there to kind of process, because he was my age, he was 27, I was 27 at the time. It was just like, and so I was sitting on that hill and just talking to him, kind of praying to him. And the one thing I was telling him was like, gosh, Jamie, you passed away, you've left this world, and I'm sitting here on top of the peaks and looking down, and there's no evidence that you were ever even there. Already the world has gone on. The scum on the top of the pond has already covered the space that you occupied. And as I was sitting there thinking that, there was these two women that were climbing up the hill together, and I remember just watching them and kind of out of just the emptiness of mind, I was kind of saying, oh look, there's two lesbians walking up the hill. And I was kind of like imagining a whole story about them. And then I was like, come into the moment, dude. You don't know anything about it. You see two women walking up a hill, that's all you know. What is this assignment of some story that surrounds them? You see, and then, so Ramakrishna is kind of bringing that to light here. He's like, why should I worry whether there's signs and symbols and, omens and whatnot? So I just take the moment as it is, consider it perfect because it is divine. I take it, I produce my perfection in it, offer it to God, and keep going. Right? He said, what would I care about that? So the master, yes, people lay ailing children down on the ground where men chant the name of God in order that they may be cured, or people cure disease through occult powers. All this is miracle working. Only those whose spiritual experience is extremely shallow call on God for the healing of disease. It was evenings. It was this idea that, why worry about the body? It's going to go either way, right? Now, sometimes as a Christian, someone might think, oh, he just kind of doxed Jesus, oh, Jesus is low because he did all those miracles. Not so. See, the difference is that each time God comes, there's a leela, they call it a play, that he performs in order to teach us. And in the play of Jesus, he came to fulfill the Jewish scriptures and to become the Messiah according to their story. And so in that Leela, he was the Messiah of the Jews who then became Jesus. For those who have faith in that, others have different ideas. But so he's not insulting the miracles of Jesus as being beginning religion. That's not the point. Jesus was in a different Leela. This time when he came, he had a different job, and he was trying to take our eyes in a different way, not to look down, not to look at this world with miracles and histories of messiahs and whatnot. This time he came to show that renunciation is fundamental to realization, and that this universe is one without a second, and that he practiced Christianity for a while, he practiced Islam for a while, he practiced several forms of the Sanatana Dharma for a while, and showed that through each one of them he was able to see God, he was able to realize God. And so at this point he was saying, I came and incarnated this time because it's time to stop with all of this fighting amongst religions, where each religion says that love is the one most important thing. It's time for this hypocrisy to end. And so this incarnation, the incarnation of Ramakrishna, he came to teach that, to teach us that we can love him from all the different aspects. He says, you know, that a baby can't pronounce father, so he just says Paul, right? And the father, the eldest son knows the father's whole name, but he says when either one of them cries out, even though they cry with a different name, the mother or the father always knows who's calling, right? He doesn't care what name, doesn't care how it's pronounced or what he has to say. When your heart calls out to the beloved hears that call and will bring you home. It was evening, and Sri Ramakrishna was seated on his bed, thinking of the Divine Mother and repeating her hallowed name. The devotees sat near him in silence. Latu and Sashi, Sharat, and the younger Naren, Paltu, Bukati, Girish, and others were present. Ramtaram of the Star Theatre had come with Girish to entertain Sri Ramakrishna with his singing. A few minutes later, Dr. Sarkar arrived. Doctor to the master, I was much worried about you last night at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was raining. I said to myself, who knows whether or not the doors and windows of his room were closed. Really, said Sri Ramakrishna. He was much pleased at the doctor's love and thoughtfulness for him. The master, as long as there is the body, one should take care of it. But I find that the body is quite separate from the self. When a man rids himself entirely of his love for lust and greed, then he clearly perceives that the body is one thing, and the self, or the soul is what he's referring to, the Atman, in another word, are another. When the milk inside the coconut is all dried up, then the kernel becomes separated from the shell, and you feel the kernel rattling inside as you shake the coconut. Or it's just like a sword and its sheath. The sword is one thing, and the sheath is another. Therefore, I cannot speak much to the Divine Mother about the illness of the body. You see, because he knew himself to be soul, and the body was incidental. And so he couldn't ask God to heal him. He wouldn't. You know, he felt like that would be asking God for trinkets. You know, why would I ask him something so unimportant? Girish to the devotees. Pandit Shashadhar said to him, meaning the master, please bring your mind to bear on the body during samadhi. That will cure your illness. And he, the master, saw in a vision that the body was nothing but a loose mass of flesh and bones. Master, once a long time ago, I was very ill. I was sitting in the Kali temple. I felt like praying to the Divine Mother to cure my illness, but couldn't do so directly in my own name. I said to her, Mother, Hriday asks me to tell you about my illness. I could not proceed any farther. At once there flashed in my mind the Museum of the Asiatic Society and a human skeleton strung together with wire. I said to her, please tighten the wire of my body like that, so that I can go about singing your name and glories. It is impossible for me to ask for occult powers. At first, Hriday asked me. I was then under his control to pray to the Mother for powers. I went to the temple, and in a vision I saw a widow, 30 or 35 years old, covered in filth. It was revealed to me that occult powers are like that filth. I became angry, and Hriday at Hriday because he had asked me to pray for powers. Ram Taran began to sing. The song went like this. Behold my Veena, my dearly beloved, my lute of sweetest tone. If tenderly you play on it, the strings will awaken at your touch. To the rarest melodies, tune it neither low nor high, and from it in 100 streams the sweetest sound will flow. But overslack the strings are mute, and overstretched they snap in twain. The doctor to Girish. Is that an original song? Girish. No, it's an adaptation from Edwin Arnold. Ram Tarang sang from the play The Life of Buddha. We moan for rest, alas, but rest we can never find. We know not whence we come, nor where we float away. Time and again we tread this round of smiles and tears. In vain we pine to know whither our path leads, and why we play this empty play. We sleep, although awake, as if by a spell bewitched. Will darkness never break into the light of dawn? As restless as the wind, life moves unceasingly. We know not who we are, not whence it is we come. We know not why we come, nor where it is we drift. Sharp woes dart forth on every side. How many drift about, now gay and drowned in tears? One moment they exist, the next they are no more. We know not why we come, nor why our deeds have been. Nor, in our bygone lives, how well we played our parts. Like water in a stream, we cannot stay at rest. Onward we flow forevermore. Burst thou our slumber's bars, O thou that art awake. How long must we remain enmeshed in fruitless dreams? Are you indeed awake? Then do not longer sleep. Thick on you lies the gloom fraught with a million woes. Rise, dreamer, from your dream, and slumber not again. Shine forth, O shining one, and with your shafts of light, slay thou the blinding dark. Our only Savior you, we seek deliverance at your feet. As Sri Ramakrishna listened to the song, he went into samadhi. Ram Taran sang again. Blow storm, rage and roar. When the song was over, Sri Ramakrishna said to the singer, what is this? Why the decoction of bitter neem leaves after the rice pudding? The moment you sang, shine forth, O shining one, and with thy shafts of light, slay thou the blinding dark, I had a vision of the sun. As he arose, the darkness vanished, and all men took refuge at his feet. Let's stop the reading there for today. Does anybody have any questions or insight or comments? Good joke. Well, we have in 15 minutes our arati for the evening, which will be a few songs until 6:15 and then meditation until 7, so you're welcome to stay for that. And there's a few announcements. Tomorrow, here in the auditorium, I'm going to speak again tomorrow on, what is my title? Practices for Now. Your spiritual practice is for this moment. Wednesdays at 5 p.m., we have a class very much like this one, but we're reading a book called God Live With Them by Swami Chaitanya, and it's Pravrajika Krishna Prana who leads that class. And on the 9th, for those who are interested, there's a Krishna worship in the San Diego Center.
That was today.
That's today. Is that today? Yeah, it's today. Yes, you know. Indeed. Any other meeting? All right. So, all of that.
You got a joke here.
Oh, yes. A joke.
Why do scientists not trust atoms?
Not trust what?
Why don't scientists trust atoms?
Adams.
Atoms. No idea.
Because they make up everything.
Huh.
Oh.